What is up? I'm Miguel Antonio, and you are listening to the Live and Create podcast. It's where I interview artists and entrepreneurs about what it means to live a great life and create great things. And before we jump into the podcast, I'd love for you to check out my band, Run With It. This is a clip from our song, Don't Waste My Time.
Some will call it all pride. You will save at the ride on my way to a rough descent. Push your thoughts aside. That word tonight means I'm satisfied with who I am. No need to read the fine print. You keep the pen and I'll keep moving along. Don't waste my time. I'm gonna climb higher than you think I can. I'm out to find all the places that you've never been. Whoa, whoa.
If you like what you heard, make sure you check us out at Run With It Band, at Run With It Band, everywhere you follow people at, or go to runwithitband.net. It'll take you to all the different links you want to go to, and there'll be a little button you can click for booking information. Now for today's podcast. Today's guest is Neal Nice. Neal's based in Lenexa, Kansas, and leads the band Velvet Fog, where he writes, records, produces, and releases his music independently. He's actively involved in 3 bands, including the Bowline Brothers and Permanent Wave. Neal's distinct sound is marked by ongoing creativity and a growing set list. It's a great episode. Enjoy.
The Live and Create podcast.
Well, for you, you got a few bands going on in the midst of it. But, you know, what's interesting, though, is so what really captured me with what you're up to is your videos that you're posting, your reels, and just the creative perspective of it while also putting out original music. And then checking out your music, you have a very, very distinct sound. Like I think some people fight for a long time to figure out their sound, where your voice and the writing and the way the instrumentation is coming together, it's like you already have this stamp in a way. It seems like of like, this is who you are. So I'm curious for you, like all this creativity, like where did that start for you? Was it something you've been writing and doing cool, like visual creative shit since you were like super little, or is it something recent?
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty creative my whole life, but the only instrument I played until I graduated high school was trombone. And then after that, I didn't have the high school jazz band and, you know, middle or concert band and stuff that I had throughout the whole course of my career as a musician. Thus, you know, at that point. And then over COVID, it's like there wasn't anybody to play with. So then it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to go about trying to capture this stuff on my own. And then also I broke up with the band that I'd been in for a couple of years in like March of this year. And so the most recent videos that you're talking about are ones that have been after that point, or then when I first moved back to Kansas City, I didn't know anybody. I didn't really have anybody to play with. So then it's like, okay, just, you know, just going to do it.
You're like, I'll just have to play all the things.
Essentially, yeah. It is much more fun playing the music with people, though, because I mean, I can do an okay job on my own of getting the point across, but where the magic really happens is like that human connection between the instruments, you know.
Right. Well, and that's crazy though, that you were basically only playing trombone up until 2020, if I heard you.
Yeah, I mean, I graduated high school in 2016 and then worked a couple of years in construction, and I had a guitar and like some drums at that point, but I wouldn't say I was like, you know, actually, you know, putting my heart and soul into it. And then over COVID was really when I was allotted the time to just sort of like, okay, I'm going to sit and figure out how to play the drums on this song that I'm writing, you know, or something like that.
That's awesome, man. That's really good. So when you're writing then and working with the band, which one is your main band? Like that's your focus, or are they all your main band?
Yeah, I mean, it's all music is just my main thing, I'd say. But right now, Velvet Fog is like the very new band that I'm sort of using my songs with and being, you know, the guitar player and vocalist for, which I've never done before. I've always been a rhythm player in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've dabbled with singing my own songs and previous bands and stuff, but I've never had a band that was like, you know, the whole set list is basically right now songs that I've written and, you know, recorded and stuff. So I'm kind of having to learn how to do that. But I'd say the other, like, you know, main focus that I'm on is playing with the Bowline brothers, which is a cover band, where they hire me for their gigs that they do at Tin Roofs around the country, because they don't need a bass player all the time. Tin Roof just, you know, wants them to have a bass player when they travel to their locations. And so I've been kind of getting on board with them lately to do that, just to sort of, you know, increase the revenue stream, I guess to say.
That always helps, man. Especially, and it's nice to increase the revenue stream when it's coming from music in one way or another, you know.
That's what I'm trying to do right now, is just try to figure out all the applicable ways to garnish revenue from music. And if I can get over a threshold, then that means that I can do music as the primary focus and then use my other skills to make up the income that I need, you know, after the fact.
Absolutely, man. Now, I think it was with the Bowline brothers. Is that where we first met? If I'm trying to remember.
Maybe. It might have also been at O'Dowd's, one of the nights.
Oh, with the Fling?
Yeah, with the Fling. You and Daniel were there playing. You guys played a couple of your songs. I think Flat Susan was playing that night as well.
Right on. Yeah, that's a fun one. Caleb is our Geronimo. Mm-hmm. Do you know Caleb? His episode is coming out here soon.
Nice.
It'll be right before
yours,
killer, actually. But
what's up, Caleb?
I love that dude. Yeah, that was the first time I ever shared the stage with him, and then him and I ended up doing a show on the road, like probably a week after that, which I thought was funny. It's like, next thing you know, we're on the road together. It's like, oh, doing this thing. But I feel like we did a show with the Bowline brothers, not like officially, but you guys were playing before us at Tin Roof at some point. But yeah, the way this music world works, it's everything kind of overlaps.
Yeah, so I just moved back here in April, and I just got on with the Bowline brothers probably a couple months ago. So I've only really done a couple of shows with them, but I'm only I'm slotted to be doing their 2025 like touring season with them, because they have like a really solid three-piece amongst themselves, where when they're playing locally, they don't need a bass player. So it just makes more sense to have less people, you know, on stage when you can, you know, have just as good a performance. But for whatever reason,
keep that revenue going.
Yeah, further. Exactly. Which I get. And that's why I'm wanting to diversify my projects, as opposed to just being like super mega invested in just one thing. Cause that's what I kind of did the past 4 years out in Lawrence. And then when that kind of, you know, fell apart for whatever reason, I mean, I found myself without any sort of real, you know, next step. And so that's when I sort of just started honing in on my own stuff, my own songs. And I recorded all of the 9 songs that I have released. Like Everything Is Me since like then. And then getting to know the scene has been something I've been really trying to work at, where that's probably where we met, was one of the nights where I was just either out playing somewhere or you were out playing somewhere. And it's like, I'm just trying to just simply meet people, because I just moved. I mean, I was only in Lawrence, but I just moved back to Kansas City. So I've never really been involved with the Kansas City scene.
Well, it's cool to see what is happening in Kansas City in the music scene, because I feel like a really great community is growing and continuing to expand in really cool ways. It's really cool. I'm curious though, you stepping from Lawrence and getting to know the scene, what's your observations as someone kind of stepping in new to the scene?
It seems like there's definitely like a lot of country music and blues music, which out in Lawrence, there's a lot of like pop punk, and like there's a lot of jazz stuff as well. And there's a lot of jazz in Kansas City too. I mean, like I said, I'm still just getting to know, you know, outside of my middle school and high school gigs and jazz band, I don't really know much about the music scene here. But my first couple of bands that I was playing with when I first moved out here were country bands, like country cover bands, and I was playing lead guitar on and stuff. And it seems like there's definitely lots and lots of action for country bands and like slow blues jam player bands like Knuckleheads, the open jams they have on the weekends.
Right. Yeah, country can keep you really busy here in. I have a friend in a country band, and they do really well, really well. They're based out of Kansas City, go all over
Nice.
the place. But he was joking one day. He's like, dude, we can get you in a cowboy hat. Let's
no.
And I was like, and I do like some country, but I told him, I was like, it'd be really, I couldn't pull it off because I know I wouldn't be authentic. Like after a while, I'd be like, okay, I can't pull this off.
No, I played with a couple of really cool like country bands, but that's never necessarily been where my most passion exists musically. Right. I mean, I had a lot of fun doing it, but then after the like 10th or 15th time doing it after moving back here, it's like, it'd be cool if I could like try to make enough money with like my own music. And that's what I'm trying to shoot for right now with Velvet Fog, is trying to just get the set list to occupy more and more time. Because I feel like a lot of live venues, they don't really care necessarily what's being played. I mean, sometimes they want a specific theme or whatever, but most of the time they're just like, can you guys play for 3 hours and then gauge the crowd and play stuff that people like? And I really feel like covers gets done the most often because like that's guaranteed people are going to like these songs because they're popular songs, but if you're the great experiment right now in my head is, seeing if I can play music that isn't necessarily covers, but it is stuff people still like. And if you can, sort of try to occupy the same gig space as a cover band that can play for 3 hours.
So you have up to 3 hours of music as well, like all original?
Oh yeah. I've got hundreds of songs written, but as Velvet Fog exists right now, we've got just over an hour of like material where right now we're still sharing the stage for most like gigs, with other bands or, sometimes it's like, I'll do an acoustic solo stuff for an hour beforehand or whatever, where there's gotta be like different acts, so to speak. But ideally, where my head is at is just trying to, and I mean, I'm playing with some really great people, Dave, Sam, and Carrie on Velvet Fog, and they're all they're making the songs a lot better, and also like learning them, like, how they go, which is really humbling for myself because I've never, been a part of a group where it's like songs that I've written are getting played and learned by other people. It's like, kind of surreal.
That's pretty cool though. So hundreds of songs. I'm very excited to hear someone say things like that.
Yeah.
That what does your process look like that leads you to have like this bank of songs?
So it's basically just kind of like an exercise that I'm always doing. And I'd say out of the 100, I'll put the caveat in there where it's like I've written hundreds of songs now. Probably over half of them suck. Like they might just be terrible songs and like are not worth doing. There might be seeds you can pull from, or whatever. It's like, this is a cool part of this, but we should rework, the rest of it.
That's I posted one day. I was like, yeah, for every 10 songs I write, maybe one will be a good one. And a friend of mine who's actually, he was signed to a publishing deal at the time. And he goes, damn, if I could do one good one every 10, I'd be doing even better than I am now. Yeah. He's like, some days I feel like it's 40 for it. Yeah. But no, I get that though. But it seems like that's part of, it's like you have to get the shitty songs out of your brain and your fingers and your heart in a way to get to the goal.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, I write a lot of different types of songs as well. Like I'm working on a song right now that's kind of like Brat-esque, like, Charlie XCX, where it's like, just like a sort of passing idea and stuff. And it's just like every idea is worth doing to an extent where it's like, it doesn't have to get perfectly polished and releasable, but it's like, you can get the main idea across with a very low amount of effort intake. It's worth, just kind of capturing, because you never know. I have no problem with having all these songs that exist in, the sort of objective archive. But for Velvet Fog, what I've been doing is pulling ones out that I think have a lot more pop accessibility while are still like fun to rock out to and like, impactful is, but, not having 3 key changes and, 2 time signature changes in them and what kind of stuff. Because I love that stuff, but people can't really dance to
that. I feel that I'm laughing so much because we work with a producer named Josh Gleave. He was based in LA for a while, out in Nashville. He was originally from KC, but he's out in Nashville now. And when we first started working with him, we had this song that was like, had a time change and all this stuff in it that we were just like, this is so cool. And he was like, yeah, that's not cool. Let's help you. And what's funny is I disagreed with him. He wanted to change it. And I was like, fine, we'll try it. And then when we tried his idea, it ended up being way better. We're like, oh, okay. No, you're right.
Yeah. I mean,
and, you know, like you said, for the goal of making it something, because you want to have that authentic, you know, who you are as a person and an artist, but you also, it's like, we have to put it out there in a way that someone can connect with it themselves.
right.
Too,
There's
you know?
ways that I'm trying, like how I try to broach the two, where it's like accessible to non-musicians, people can dance to it, and then like the stuff that's really fun for musicians to play, where it's like really interesting things happening within the song, and trying to marry those two things in a way where there's really interesting sort of ideas and things, variables changing and whatever happening with such subtlety that people that are listening to it, it doesn't take any more brain power to listen to a new section, where it's like, if you just simply reverse a chord progression, that's just a 2-chord progression between one verse and the next, you're creating like a layer of like intricacy there, but it still sounds super familiar to the audience because they're fully familiar with both of those chords. It's just by you're, you know, accenting one as the start as opposed to the other.
Right. I love that. Now you said it's an exercise. So for you, do you approach it like, I'm going to write this amount of time each day, I'm trying to do a song a day? What does that look like? What's the exercise look like for you on a day-to-day basis?
Usually it starts with me hearing a really like a song that like impacts me profoundly. And I'm like, wow, that's really cool. Like, that's a great idea. And every song I've ever written, I can tell you the aggregate of songs that I took for inspiration, you know, like, for example, I have a song called Mistakes, where the chorus, it goes like, all the mistakes, don't want to listen. And that was inspired by the Smiths song, This Charming Man. Because I thought the chorus, when he was saying, he knows so much about these things, I thought that he was saying, mistakes. And so then I just wrote a song with that, you know, it's a different chord per, you know, change or whatever, but it's the same essence, you know, just what I thought I was hearing all these years.
I like that a lot. That's really cool.
But yeah, listening to music is usually what kind of inspires it. When I go out and see, like, you know, live music played, it's like I'll get home and I'm like, oh, I feel super juiced up right now. Like, you know, just gonna do something with this sort of a concept. And then
like you get home and then you're up till 4 a.m. finishing it.
Yeah. No, and like you gotta get to a point where it's like you can just fool yourself long enough to give the idea an actual chance. Because if you're in like a self-conscious headspace, the idea, you won't ever like allow yourself to get past those benchmarks that you need in order to like just continue the conversation, you know, like you'll get hung up on like, oh,
I love that, to fool yourself long enough. That's a great way to look at it. Cause yeah, if I start overthinking like from the first line, I'm like, yep, this song's shit. Next song.
Yeah.
You know? Instead of actually chasing that idea.
Yeah.
Down.
And most of the time my lyrics will start off with like BS, like just sort of like ad-libbed, so, you know, sort of jokey sort of lyrics just to get the melody down. Or sometimes I'll just start humming, but you know, sometimes I'll start yelling, you know, like for Illusions Are Right, like the chorus for that song, like started out with when you're chewing on the blue, like those little blue chew tablets. And it's like, that was the joke lyric where it's like, okay, like now I got to write something that actually is like, you know, when you're feeling all alone, and, you know, kept the same melody and everything, but it's just, you got to fill in the gaps wherever you can until it starts to have a more clear general picture. Cause then you can really start just riffing over it once you have the general concept established.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time over my piano just mumbling nonsense until words start slowly falling out, and then it starts crafting and building.
Yeah.
You know, obviously with 100 songs in your bank, you know that process as well.
Yeah, just repeating the same lyric over and over again until you find the next thing to say, you know?
Yes. That's when my wife and I first got married, a lot of her friends would ask her, like, is it really cool, like, being at home with like a musician and like hearing him play songs all the time? She goes, no, it's not. Cause he sits there and sings the same thing, like the same line over and over and over for like an
Yeah.
hour, and I don't understand what he's doing.
That hits home. I lived with my little brother for a couple of years when I was going to school out in Lawrence, and he said the same thing. He would come in at like 3 a.m. He's like, "Dude, can you please just play a different song? Like, can you please just play like a different verse or something?" Just because, like, I mean, you get it. You know, when you're trying to figure it out, you know, you can sit and think about it all you want, but it's not like a theoretical sort of concept. Like, it's very much like a literal physical, you know, sort of action where you have to be doing it in order to feel what's next. You can't superimpose what comes next just you know, in a figment.
Right. Yeah, it's like trying to find that emotion. And it's like, to me, I think of it almost like I'm digging deeper, even though I'm saying the same line. It's like I'm looking deeper, like in myself, and trying to find, okay, where is this wanting to go? And sometimes I have to zoom out and get, you know, like, and then often now I'm bringing it to my band, and then we're hashing out lyrics.
Yeah,
and, you know, all that. Previously, I used to write by myself a lot.
I mean, writing by yourself is like, it's nice to be able to do it where it's like, you know, if you can fish, you can feed yourself sort of thing. But where I get my love of music, and this comes from like playing in jazz band on the trombone, you know, from 5th grade to, you know, senior year, where it's like just playing with other people. That's where the real magic of music is, in my opinion. And getting really great recordings is really hard to do when you're just doing it all yourself and playing it all on your own, because there's just a lot of magic that's lost between like the interpersonal human connection of a band playing together, where it's like, I'm pretty proud of like the recordings that I have released under Neal Nice, you know, and the songs to just sort of have the preliminary bank of songs for Velvet Fog to be playing. But I'm really looking forward to getting recordings of the band playing these songs all together and releasing the music under Velvet Fog, actually, because there's just, I mean, the additions that everybody in the band is making to the songs is just like, I don't even want to listen to the versions that I recorded on my own anymore. Like, it's just so much better having everybody get to put their own sort of personality into it, where it just makes it like the culminessence is just a much greater thing. Like, there's just more to it, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. There's, I just shared as a Mark Ronson quote. I can't remember it word for word, but it really like connected with me as a band, as we've gone through this. I'm bringing it up right now. He said, the magic really happens when two people bring their own vibe and vision together to create something neither could do alone. And that's what I've been seeing more and more. You know, in fact, this Tuesday, we had another writing session, laying down demos. And, you know, the wine starts flowing and ideas keep flowing. And it's like, I was supposed to leave at like 9 p.m. It's 11:30 p.m. and we're still going. But it was this like almost magical, where you like this nugget of an idea I had brought in. And then all of a sudden the guitarist has something, but he had an idea for the bass, and the bass guitar had an idea for like my vocal. And then it just all starts like sifting around, and then something beautiful again that not one of us could find on our own. You had to have those people in that
It becomes
room.
a thing where it's like different parts of the brain talking to each other, where it's like if you're just using one part of your brain on something, you know, and then when you're with other people, there's like you know, an information highway flowing between everybody, where like in real time you're able to sort of play off of somebody doing something else, where, you know.
Right.
And I think for me, getting back to, you know, the original like question of how does the process look, it's mostly just about finding what the progression is, what the beat is, and what the, you know, vocal melody is. And it's like, you can take those things to a band and it can look a million different ways. Like, you can do a million different versions of a single song. And that's how I like to look at my songs, is they're not, you know, these sort of static individual sort of objects. They're like these, you know, these evolving biological creatures that, you know, morph with whatever setting they're in, kind of like how we do, where it's like, you know, the same man never steps in the same river twice, or whatever sort of thing, where, you know, for it's a different man, you know, sort of whatever concept. And so the songs that I write, I have no problem if, you know, obviously this is nowhere near where I'm at, but it's like, if there's ever anybody that wanted to play one of my songs that was not a band that I had anything to do with, I would be fine with it, just simply because like I would love to like see how else that song can exist. Kind of like the Grateful Dead, they would
Right.
release all of their live tracked out, songs from their shows, where it's like all these different versions of the song. Grateful Dead fans would be like, oh, I love Paris 72 or whatever, version of yada yada.
Absolutely. No, that's really cool, man. That's really cool. That's when you were talking about in the beginning, you were talking about the business end a little bit, like trying to figure out how to make money off of like your actual original music, right? Obviously, live is an aspect. Are there other avenues that you've been delving into?
Yeah. So what I'm trying to do right now is just get as many sort of different revenue streams like with music, and try to be injecting my songs as it's applicable, where I don't think it's necessarily something I really believe that could work if I was to try to make enough money from just streaming revenues alone. I mean, I think I can definitely get money
Right.
for like drumsticks and, strings and stuff from like that. But in terms of having a substantial part of an income, I think that's kind of if it happens, great, but I can't necessarily bank on that. For success, I'm more looking for, can I make X amount of money from music alone? Whether that's through, the combination of revenue streams, playing for cover bands, playing my own original stuff, doing studio work for bands, like just the aggregate. If I can get to X dollar amount, then, if I need to go paint a house once a month, over a weekend, I can get, whatever sort of supplemental income to be able to take care of, my future family and whatnot, the same as,
Right.
Anything else.
It does seem like the music world is often an overlap of those multiple streams.
Yeah.
For a lot of people.
And I don't really know what I'm doing, so I'm like definitely like trying to look to the scene and other people for, inspiration and what to do. I've been really trying to focus on being able to generate content for social media in a way that's effective, where it's like, that's not my whole shtick sort of thing, but I recognize that you have to be sort of doing these things if you want to be looking at it from a business lens sort of in these times.
Absolutely. Well, the opportunities that are out there, man, it's just wild with, content. But I think that is a piece of discovering. We're in this process of discovering what kind of content do we want to make instead of like trying to chase trends. And then what value is it bringing to our followers and hopefully new followers that come in. And it's been a lot more fun than like in the past. There's times where I felt like we were just trying to chase things.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to stab my eye out, where now it's actually starting to get fun. It's like, oh no, this feels fun. This feels creative. Let's go this direction. That's one thing I do love, like these videos. I can't remember what song it was. It was one of yours where you had the box, like the squares and the rectangles of every single thing that you were playing. To me, that's really engaging and creative. And it's setting a tone of like, this is who
that's
I
interesting, because
am,
I've always
fun
what
to see.
I've heard feedback wise is that I need to have like more streamlined content and stuff, where it's cutting between videos and only like a minute long video, to be more shareable and accessible, because just and I mean, that's really great to hear that, so thank you. But like, because that's what I love to do, and I feel like I'm cutting cutting it short if I if I have a whole base video recording. Like, why would I not share the whole thing, instead of just cutting it down? But I'm still trying to figure out that the science behind the way it works, because I have no idea what I'm doing, but I know that I need to be doing something in that light.
I feel you. Well, and what we talk about macro, I don't know why I said it that way. Like I have a weird macro. We talk about macro content and micro content. And so that's where I wonder, like if people are not liking the longer ones, which I think longer ones can be cool. And I think there's a huge place for them, but then take like a 4-minute video, and that is like, now you can cut that up into like 5 different pieces, and then drop the full one, then drop a 30-second of this, 30-second of that part, and highlight. So that's what we've been doing a lot of taking like a larger piece, and it exists out there, even the podcast, the way we do it, you know, on Spotify, you can see the full video, YouTube, you can see this full video, but then we just put a little piece out, like little nuggets.
Yeah, you'll have like chapters for them.
But yeah, I think if
you said you have like chapters for like an individual podcast that you can like have it sectioned out as.
Not everything we do, but on the podcast itself, it is chaptered out, but then we'll clip out. Obviously you've probably seen some of the clips on there. I think I've seen you like some of them where we just have like little bits of it and that kind of thing. And then there's like other videos, like a promo video we did where we put out chunks and then we put out the whole thing. And then one time I did a carousel, it was like a minute chunk, but you had to scroll through the carousel, you know, and half the times we're just fucking throwing things at the wall to see what happens.
Yeah, no. And honestly, it's really awesome being and following you on Instagram, because then I can sort of be looking at other people that, you know, seem to be, you know, gaining steam in that regard, where it's like, okay, I can sort of take that the same way that I write songs, where it's like, okay, that's a cool idea. Like, let me see how I can do this in my own way. Where lately with Velvet Fog, what we've been doing is our guitar player, Sam, he sets up his GoPro and he'll get like just a running take of the whole practice. And then afterwards he'll send us like awesome. 2.5 minute segment, or we'll post it on our Facebook page, where it's just like, he'll turn it into, he'll clip certain parts and put them together and have text pop up for some of them, where it's like, you know, it's an art in and of itself. And I don't want to sell it short, simply because that's not where I'm the most passionate, but like, it is definitely like a super cool and fun art form once you know, figure out what you want it to be, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that seems to be the trick. I know that's been the tricky part for us. We're still in the discovery phase, because we were like social media. There's like 2 eras of our band, because we had ended a few years ago. I had quit music basically and walked away. But right before that, we were seeing really, like, we were touring all over, doing a lot of cool shit. And social media was a big piece of that. But it was still pretty much the early days of I don't even think TikTok was around yet. I think it was still Vine or something. I can't remember, but Instagram and Snapchat were our big ones, but it was still early on. And then when we fired the band back up, it just realizing like whole social media landscape had changed from when we were. So it's like, we've had to relearn, like, principles are still the same, but the execution, we're like, what the fuck? Okay.
Yeah. It's
like back then we were doing good just to post shit, because most bands were like, oh fuck that. We're now
the mindset of like, can't be bothered. Like, that's the band that I was, the group that I was with out in Lawrence for a couple of years, where we lived in the same house, and the band had a couple different sort of formats, but it was me and this other main guy named Chris. And where it's like, that band, those, like, that group, in whatever capacity it existed, never did anything like on social media. And it's just like, if you can't be bothered to do it, then like, don't like expect anything to, you know, be different, because, you know, just like sort of sitting and waiting for things to happen because your music is so good is just not like the reality. Like, you know, you could be the best composer and recorder ever, but if nobody ever hears your music, you know, and nobody's going to ever hear it anyways.
It's so true. It is so true. Excuse me. For you with the writing, figuring out all these multi streams, like, do you have like an ultimate goal in mind right now?
Yeah. So right now I'm trying to get above a certain dollar value threshold. 'Cause right now I'm an environmental scientist, and I love doing that work, and I want to continue to always, you know, be working in for, you know, in environmental works in some capacity, but I'm getting close combined with, that's why getting like the nice cover band scheduled gigs is super nice, because it's like you can have a certain, you know, dollar value on expected income, so to speak, where if you can start getting close enough to a certain threshold, then you can superimpose, you know, how much you know, you can expect, you know, from gigs to pop up as well. Or if I can get, you know, my income from music above a certain amount, then I'll be able to sort of supplement it with the other things that I'm able to do as needed, which could really be great for me, because then that would allot me to have a lot more freedom to choose when I work for when I have kids and whatnot, which is coming up on the horizon for me.
Right on. So do you have a kid on the way?
No,
Is,
I'm getting
engaged.
or I'm engaged, but I'm getting married in March of next year to my fiance Tatum.
Awesome,
Yeah.
man. Very cool.
Yeah,
Congrats.
no, we're getting married on our 9-year anniversary, so I think
Nice. That's awesome.
right now I'm just trying to get to use the time that I have right now, which I'm really looking forward to all of the phases of life, and experiencing it in every capacity. But like right now, it's like I'm 26 years old, so it's like, if there's kind of any time to give it, the good old college try to see what you can accomplish. If you can set up the logistics, and have them in place, then it's really not an unsustainable amount of work to keep, to maintain things. If you're, my assumption is like, if you're well known in the city, people can rely on you to show up and play, in the way that you advertise, then you'll get gigs, and you'll get work and whatever.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, congratulations. I've done this journey now, music full time since, well, not the whole time, but from 2016 roughly is when I stepped away from my quote unquote real job and went full time music. There was kind of a break somewhere in there when I gave up music entirely.
Yeah.
There was like a little 2-year, like I had to work some shit out, I think but yeah, with married and 4 kids,
nice.
On that same journey, and it's been cool. And even as my boys got older, I would take them out on the road, and one of them works in kind of behind the scenes capacity in the music industry on his own now as he's older. So it's a fun journey. And some people, I think, can use it as a way to like run away from their dreams, when they get married or whatever. But I've seen a lot of people now where they're like, no, this is my dream. This is where I want to go. But I also want to go with this person because I love this person too. So how do we do that? How do we work this out together? It's cool to see.
Yeah, no,
Really cool
she's awesome. She's been my best friend for like almost 9 years now. And she doesn't care where like I make my money. Like, it's like, she's happy to support me in whatever passion. I mean, her support is one of the reasons where I'm really like actually trying with serious intent to do something with this, because beforehand it's always just kind of been like the side thing that I do for extra money on the side. But it's since I moved back to Kansas City and I've just been navigating things on my own, I was really getting to the point where it's like, I think I could actually give this a shot, to try to make that the main sort of stream. It's super cool hearing stories like yours where it's like you're actually able to do that, because I mean it's not unfeasible, right? Like it's not like I'm trying to be, conquer the world and, be doing sold out shows of hundreds of thousands of people. Like I'm just trying to earn, a decent living through whatever, I'm doing, and if I can make music a larger portion of that, pie, then that means I get to play music a lot more in my life, which is ideally the goal,
Absolutely. And we found too, because even Run With It, we have our cover sets and cover gigs and private gigs that we do as well. But because of that, we've had to learn over 4 hours of music, on top of writing and recording, doing our originals. But we noticed after about the 6 months it took for us to get that full show together, we were like, damn, it kicked our asses. And it was just nice to, I felt like it forced us to grow by doing something that I would say probably when I first started this journey a decade ago, I just was never excited about playing covers at all, or doing like the bar gig type thing, just playing covers. But yeah, after this season of doing it, I'm like, okay, I think we needed that because it informed our writing. I think it made us better musicians, better writers. And because of doing all the tracks for it too, it's helped us become much better at production,
right?
to figuring out how to work the DAW and how to work, levels and even mastering and mixing and all those
and
kind
layering
of
the audio on the video and
absolutely. So it's, yeah, I think that finding that way to be sustainable in music, then it's like it just compounds after that and ideally keeps growing, But your daytime job is you're a scientist.
Yeah.
Though.
I was in it.
That's pretty
Yeah, I
cool
was an
too.
environmental database manager at the Bureau of Water at Kansas Department of Health and Environment, and then I was an environmental compliance officer. And then since I moved back in April, I've just been doing more consultant work and trying to do music, more intentfully, where I'm doing a lot of those
Right.
cover things. Because I was always the same way, and that was sort of the general consensus with the group I was in Lawrence for several years as like, oh, it's got to be original, which I love original music, but at the same time there is just a certain reality to face, right, where it's not like how it was in the 60s and 70s, where people would go to the club and expect to hear the original band's original songs that they haven't heard before. Now it's like very much that sort of thing where it's hard to put together a band to get 4 hours of original material, whether you're writing original material together as a band or
Yeah.
injecting your own solo written material, where it's hard to get people excited to learn 4 hours of songs that they've never heard before. And so right now I'm trying to just sort of build that up, where I'm doing like the cover band gig work to get that sort of realistic application sort of, playing out, making money from shows. And with Velvet Fog, we're, sort of building up to that, where you can build, you can play this similar amounts of time. Because really, at the end of the day, it's just about making sure that it's worth everybody's while in the band. It sucks trying to ask people to show up to
Absolutely.
be going home with like $25 when you're spending $15 in gas to get there or something.
Yep. Yeah, there's definitely some gigs, especially in this last year, I've had to turn down. Even some that I really wanted to do, but once we dove into the numbers, it's like, man, unfortunately, it just where we're at as a band is like, and what my guys like, yeah, like I said, you feel bad like going back to him and be like, hey, how do you feel about playing for $25 and some beer? It's like, man, I don't think we're doing
which
that.
for me, I'm there all
Let's
day.
not do
Like,
that.
I mean, you count me in. Like, I'm good to play for $25
Right.
in beer. But like, it's about maintaining that sort of, I mean, for lack of a better word, just sort of just sense of decorum amongst the band, where it's like everybody is investing their time and energy into something. And especially with Velvet Fog,
Yeah.
because like they're all learning my songs, where it's like, okay, I'm gonna match all of the time and energy you guys put into this band, and then some, because like you guys are having to do the real heavy lifting, because I know how these songs go, so I'll like match that energy level, like an effort level, just with
Right.
making sure the band has places to play and gets social media posted and whatever.
all the things we have to learn to do a band in
To do a
2024.
band, yes, to do a band, you have to. And there's no wrong way to enjoy music or to play music. Like, the Weekend Warriors, where it's like, you'll play a couple of shows a year. There's no like wrong way to do that. Like, if that's what, fills your soul, more power to you. But it's just the hard part about a band is just
Absolutely.
getting all of the investment levels and expectation levels synced up, because it's so individualized to each musician themselves. It's like hard to find people that sync up on like, I want to spend this much time together rehearsing. I want to achieve X, Y, and Z ambition, goals, whatever. And, I expect this and that out of everybody else in the band.
Right. It can definitely be a challenge. It's been, for us as a band, we've existed since 2014, I think, 2013, somewhere around that. And it's gone in so many different iterations, and a lot of it has been that, like, navigating what people wanted out of it, what we said we wanted, but what our actions were saying we wanted. All and the chasm that was there. There was a lot of hard pieces. I think people, if you've never been in a band, I feel like sometimes people don't understand like the amount of, I think, emotional intelligence it takes. And for me, a lot of times it's just me exposing my lack thereof emotional intelligence and having to learn and grow, and get better at leading. One thing I hear in the things you keep referencing. So talking about, I hear this idea of value, like bringing value, where you're thinking about your songs. It's obviously your heart, your vision, but you seem like you're focused on trying to find a way to connect that with an audience and bring value to them. And then hearing you even talk about your bands, like obviously you get value out of this, but it seems like you're trying to find value for them. Like what you're asking, what are they getting out of it too? And how can I resource that? That focus, I feel like is very unique. And I'm curious where that sense comes from. Is that a natural thing of who you are, or is that something you've developed over time?
I mean, it's kind of one of those things where I'm not any sort of, I wouldn't say like morally, ethically driven person, but one of those things where when you're looking at it from an artistic sense, it's like, for me, the true value of art is like what you place on it. And it's like, I would not ask anybody else to be a part of something that I myself wouldn't be willing to accept if I was on the other end. Cause like I was doing gig work as a lead guitar player in a country band. You know, I've done gig work in an original band on the drums and stuff where it's like, I've sort of dealt with it from all the other ends. Right. And so this is my first time leading a band, but like I'm empathetic and empathize with all of, you know, the effort it takes for somebody to bring their drums to a gig, you know, get everything loaded up, go set up at the gig, set up the mics and, you know, all that. And I recognize, you know, how much driving everybody has to do because I drive 45 minutes for practice twice a week with one of the groups that, you know, I work with. And it's just like, I'm uniquely aware of it. And I care enough about, you know, like I'm really with the Velvet Fog group, I'm like, very humbled because it's like, okay, these people are listening and learning songs that I've written and recorded and released. And so I'm not going to take that for granted, where it's like, I'm not going to ask you to show up and play some like shitty gig where you're not going to get any money. Like, I think that time would be best spent just getting better, honestly, like, you know, rather than doing something like that. And right now the challenge is finding, you know, ways to incorporate other acts into the gig, which that's what I'm trying to do right now is like, I'm playing with a couple original bands as well, like in the scene that aren't like my thing. They're not my songs. And I'm, you know, playing the drums on the one in Permanent Wave where I'm trying to find ways to sort of coalesce them and then be able to market to like the same sort of venues I was talking about earlier, where it's like, they're just looking for 3 hours of live entertainment. Or, you know, some Facebook, you know, group post, they'll be like, can somebody fill in for X, Y, or Z gig? Like it's 3 hours long, needs a full band, you know, where if you can sort of just find ways to fill in that gap, I think that's really the first large hurdle to getting, you know, places to play original music, you know, just being able to play enough time.
I like that. It's like a co-op way of bringing value to the venue as well, to where, and then if you have 3 different groups, in a sense, at minimum, they're all going to bring 3 different friends groups with them.
Yeah.
You know, and at maximum, if they have a following, then it continues, you know, there, I could see that. I feel like that's a decent pitch to a venue.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like splitting like a 3-hour set amongst 2 original bands is ideal. And if I'm incorporated in both of those original bands, I can be the one sort of stem head from those 2 groups that interacts with the venue, where it's like, I can make sure that everybody's logistics, you know, for the drummers, what their setup is. And, you know, we can combine gear where you don't have to be tearing stuff down and setting stuff up again. You can just have a seamless transition into like, now the next segment of entertainment, you know, to get drunk to. And again, it's that primary principle, as long as it's, you know, people can like it and dance to it. That's the, you know, I mean, I don't know whether my music and my songs or stuff that I'm a part of necessarily checks that box, but I'm really trying to find out right now, you know, because if I have to just be committed to doing like cover work in order to sort of, because I love playing music and I love, you know, music being the primary focus of my, you know, heart and soul. And so if that, you know, doing cover work or fill-in work is where, you know, I have to go, that's totally fine. But right now I'm just in an exploratory phase of, you know, seeing how far I can get.
Right. Well, it's cool that for you, that leadership role, it sounds like you're really great at the leadership role because you also know how to like be part of a team and follow really well, you know? I think that's really cool to have that perspective. Like, if I was the drummer right now, what would I want, you know, and lead that. And I think that's amazing because I think that's something that doesn't get talked about enough in a band as well, because we often think of it as like friends just hanging out playing music, but in a sense it is like this organizational structure, and it does need a leader. It needs, or some kind of leadership function, even if it's just like I know some bands that are fully democratic, like fully everyone gets an equal vote, but that they made a decision to do that thing, instead of just like willy nilly. But often it seems like there is usually a point person who's got the vision, but is also looking out like, how can we bring this team together? And it sounds like you got that rolling already, which is really cool.
It's my first time ever.
I feel like
it's my first time ever being that person, so to speak. And it's I'm checking with everybody all the time, probably too frequently, to be honest with you, where it just becomes confusing at a certain point. But it's like, we have conversations about direction, about stuff, and like I'm usually sort of conceptualizing and plotting, and then coming to the group where it's like, okay, we can do X, Y, or Z, where it's like we talked about getting a collective 3 hours of music together so that we don't have to be splitting tickets for gigs. And I was like, what do you guys want to do? Do you want to just do half cover and half original? Do you want to split the stage with like another original band? Or it's like, do you want to just learn, enough of my songs? Because when you're learning songs that I've already written, it's a lot faster than trying to write brand new songs as a band. And so...
Oh, yeah.
Sorry. What are you saying?
Oh, no, I was agreeing.
And so
with
it's
you
like,
that
you have three tiers where it's like the fastest way to fill a set list, like up with songs, is to learn covers. The second fastest is to learn songs that are already written. Like, like I'm choosing songs that I've already written that fit the aesthetic and vibe of the band. And then the third, the slowest one, which is, conceptually writing a brand new song from scratch as a band. And it's like, I offered those three options up to everybody, and it seems like we're on board with the option of just learning songs that I've already written, but then everybody's putting their own spin on it and putting, generating their own part, where it's like, the structured song in a general sense exists, but the way that it specifically, ends up being is to be determined. Everybody gets to come up with their own, how we want to do it live.
Well, and I know for us that informed that process, because I had a chunk of songs that I brought in, and then we added new members. We used to tour as a 3-piece, and now we have a 5-piece. It was that process of them learning the songs that were already in a rep that started informing when we finally started writing like from scratch together. It's like we already started learning like, oh, he likes to dig a little bit more like on this bass line, or, he really is great at these riffs, this kind of thing. It's like starting to figure out like each piece that the person brings. And it's a fun process, man. I can geek out about songwriting.
Me too. Yeah, no,
forever,
from the 10 songs, I guess it's 9 songs that I've released. And then there's 10 songs on the Velvet Fog set list right now. That are like giggable that we can, occupy an hour to an hour and a half worth of time for, where Sam and Dave, Sam's the key guitar player and Dave's the bass player. They start calling it like Neal threes, because during verses, I like to repeat a chord progression, just 3 cycles of the chord progression instead of 4 or 2, where it's like, it pops up in the songs that I'm choosing for Velvet Fog, where it's like, I'm trying to be, accessible while still trying to throw fun intricacies to make the songs interesting to play for the band. And then there's parts where it's like, we're calling them Dave's build, where it's like, he'll start doing some build section on the bass, and it's like let's do that. Like during this part of the song where it's like, he'll just be going up and down a scale before we get to the penultimate chorus sort of thing or whatever. And it's just, you start learning each other's personalities and playing off of them as well.
I like that. I like putting a name to it. It's like my bass player, he wants to put a breakdown, a halftime breakdown in like everything we ever do. I kept pushing against it. I love the feel. And I told him, I was like, I have nothing against it. It's just, we can't put it in every song.
Yeah.
And so we took these songs to Nashville, and this past January, and Josh Gleave, he's the guy who's producing. He like spins around his chair. He's like, okay, go with me on this bridge. I think we need a halftime, like dig, and we break down. And man, Matt's face, he just started smiling. He's like, yeah,
that's awesome.
And I was almost in tears laughing so hard.
Dude, that's really what it's all about,
all right.
man. It's just like those feelings that you get when it's like, and you've had a day of recording and the band's sounding great, and you're listening to the recordings when you get home, or it's like, you're heading home after like a really great show that was just a ton of fun, and the audience connecting and everything. It's like those moments are like what we're all as artists just chasing after, and it's like trying to combine the sort of practical, applicable, sort of logistics that need to be taken care of for our lives, but then chasing that feeling as much as we can and incorporating, making money with that feeling as much as we can, because it's just, that's the drug, is just, those feelings of cracking up in the studio because you see your bass player being like, yeah, like that's what I've been trying to say.
Yeah. He literally was like, he's like, yep. He's like, he said it, not me, just so you know. I wasn't wrong. That's awesome, man. Well, I'm excited to hear the progression from what you have up currently. And then when Velvet Fog gets things out, I'm excited to hear that growth and see that. But unfortunately, I got to land the plane. So I want to hit the last two questions of the podcast. So right now in your life, how would you define living a great life?
Making enough money with music to justify that being my primary source of revenue. Doesn't have to be the only, but where I can spend majority of my working hours doing mostly music related things, that would be a win. So that I can be the best husband and father that I plan to. I've planned to have a family in the next, several years, and I'm trying to sort of brainstorm, and my master plan is to sort of do that so that I can have the freedom also to, be dropping my kids off in the morning and picking them up from school. And then I go to work, so to speak, at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock that night, after I put them to bed. And then also for music, it would be being able to make most of my money off of as original, art as I can. But
that's awesome. That's really awesome. And last question, how would you define creating great things?
Extending the narrative. Just as I think music and art in a more general in a more general sense is all just a collection of humans contributing. Like every song I've ever written, I can tell you exactly which parts of which already written songs incorporated into that thing existing. And so that's why I feel so strongly about original music, is that you're just adding more stuff to the aggregate for people to pull from, where it's like, even if there's only two musicians that ever hear one of my songs, if one of them, feels some kind of way about it and then writes their own song based off of that, then that's like, you're adding to the pot. Like you're adding more, and especially like with like AI music and stuff now, like all of that stuff can only pull from things that already exist. It can't come up with anything new. And it's as a musician or an artist, just adding new stuff to the conversation is just what it's all about. That's success to me.
Dude, I love that perspective. My drummer and I don't know.
I love Daniel.
He was at the Fling that. We were just talking about that idea of like, when you're chasing whatever this dragon is in the art, like that thing that's in your brain, to finally one day discover that it was the thing that someone else was waiting for, that then inspired them to the next thing. And there was a guest on the podcast, this drummer named Andy, and he said he'd been slaving over this like snare sound. And what was funny is he was like, I know it sounds crazy, but like I've spent like hours upon hours on this one snare sound. I started laughing. I was like, bro, that's not crazy at all. I've spent entire days.
That's super relatable, actually.
Just a snare. I was like, yeah, it does not sound crazy to me. And he's like, I just knew I was chasing this thing. And then he said, then on TikTok, he like posted videos of him using, the snare that he created, all this thing. A guy reaches out to him and says, I want to pay you to record on this song that I have, because for months I've been trying to get the snare right. I hear this thing in my head, but I cannot figure it out. And when I heard you play that, that's the snare that was in my head. And like, oh man. And you saying, I love it. You said extending the narrative.
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Right. Like that's a great way to title that aspect. It's like, we have to chase this thing, and then it only betters like.
Yeah, it's like every scientist is all of the work they do in their life is built off of all of the work that every scientist that existed before them did, when, you make your great breakthrough, it's not what you were able to simply culminate in your own lifetime. It's, what existed in the time that your life existed.
That's awesome. That's exciting. Makes me want to go write more songs. Let people know how they can connect with you, listen to the music.
Sweet. Yeah, no, awesome. I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to get to chat with you about this stuff. It's super cool to just talk and conversationally about these sort of concepts and stuff, and kind of helps me organize my own file cabinet, so to speak. So, and I look forward to seeing all of your guys' upcoming stuff. I listened to your new music you released lately, and it sounds awesome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. And so do you have a website as well, or is it just Instagram?
I have a link tree. That's the handle on that is also Neal Nice. It's everywhere you can search for usernames. It's Neal Nice right now. Velvet Fog is on a couple of things, but that's still kind of getting the ball rolling.
Right on. So if they follow you, they can know what's
going
on.
Yeah. The two are associated. So whenever there's a Velvet Fog gig, I post it on my site as well.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for making the time.
Yeah, really awesome. Appreciate you, Miguel.
Thank you for listening to the Live and Create podcast. If you like what you heard, make sure you subscribe and leave a comment or a review.
The Live and Create podcast.